Hi, this is Frank Schaefer. I grew up in the evangelical religious right, fled almost 40 years ago, and have been working hard ever since to try to undo the damage my family did in turning the Republican Party hard to the right. When I grew up, I knew a lot of political leaders because I was my father's nepotistic sidekick. That's the way the white evangelical God business runs. They're all family businesses, very much like the Trump model of nepotism and self-dealing, and we were no different. Back in those days, the New York Times described me after I left the evangelical world in an article about a memoir I had written as evangelical royalty. Well, I wasn't Democratic Party royalty or left-wing royalty. You know, I wasn't Barbra Streisand's kid. I was an evangelist child. As such, all my political contacts were on the right. My mother swam in the White House pool when Betty Ford was there. I met Ronald Reagan and Bush presidents. I have handwritten notes from Barbara Bush, blah, 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 blah. But I did meet one Democratic leader, Joe Biden. I was riding a train down to Delaware a few years ago after my son was in the Marine Corps. I think I was going from New York to Delaware for a speaking gig with an NPR radio station outside the Philadelphia area and some other things that I was doing. And Senator Biden, he wasn't vice president then, was on the train. And I just sat down next to him and shook his hand. And we had a very nice 10 or 15 minute conversation. I told him about my family and who I had been. He had actually heard of my dad, who was the person who started the evangelical wing of the pro-life movement back in the 70s and 80s. And of course, he knew Dr. Sierra Coop, who was my friend that I had made the movie with, Whatever Happened to the Human Race, that really began the Republican Evangelical Alliance on the pro-life movement. And we had a pleasant discussion. So I haven't seen him since then, but I have followed his career. Both of our sons served in Afghanistan, in the military. I understand where he's coming from in terms of family and all the rest of it. I've spent a lot of time in the last 4 years, actually 5, because I was on to Donald Trump when he first got into the race, and I knew he was dangerous and predicted it. In a video I made many years ago, it seems now, I think 4 years ago, called Let Me Explain the Donald. But now I'd like to say, let me explain the Biden, the Joe. I like Joe Biden. I don't care if he misspeaks once in a while. What I care about is in his thoughtful moments, quietly with advisors and experts, scientists, people who know what they're doing. Will he listen to advice? He does listen. When I look back on my conversation with him, what amazed me is how he listened. I've known a lot of political leaders over the years, and he wasn't pitching me anything. He was genuinely interested in me, in our little talk we had together. He actually reminded me of my Republican friend, Congressman Jack Kemp, who ran with Bob Dole. I think Jack and Biden were friends. I'm sure they knew each other. But back in those days, there was a certain type of collegial person who was in politics actually for the right reasons, Republicans and Democrats. When I think of Joe Biden, I think of the sort of person that with an enlarged prostate that I have, with my PSA numbers going up as a 68-year-old male, reminds me of some of the good doctors that I've encountered who have helped me out and issued scans, and one did a biopsy. The way I describe it is Joe has a good bedside manner. I'd like to walk into an office and find that he was the guy who was about to do an EKG on me for my most recent stress test. I would like to have him consulting with me and giving me the advice on whether I should get another biopsy on my prostate or not, or whether the MRI was enough. He's the sort of person I instantly trusted and like. Sure, he's a political person, but you know, suffering has a way of winnowing out the chaff in our lives in a very biblical, spiritual way. You just aren't as much of a bullshitter when you have gone through what Joe has gone through. I tasted a little bit of that when my son was being shot at in Afghanistan for 2 years, and I really don't think I slept for those 2 years. I know I must have, or I'd be dead, but it doesn't feel like it. And the crunch of the tires of the Jeep on the driveway would make my heart stop. I kept expecting it to be a van with a couple guys wearing their dress blues come to tell me I'd lost my son. Been there, done that. Joe's been there, done that. I get Joe. As far as policy goes, Joe is a middle-of-the-line Democrat. He should make people feel safe on all sides of the issues. There will be nothing extreme done. All this insanity about him being a sort of a socialist or some sort of, communist plant or whatever is just such nonsense. He's anything but an extremist. But here's the good thing. He really cares about environmental issues. The Green New Deal has a much better chance of being policy with him, and the practical reliance he makes on expert advice and others, and his international relations and connections around the world where people love him as opposed to, say, the way they feel about Donald Trump. There's a real chance he'll get something done. He's going to defend the rights of women that my family did so much to undermine in attacking abortion rights. He is a feminist to his core. He treats women well. I know women who know him and who have worked for him, and I know them better than I knew him. As I say, it was just one conversation in a train seat, and then I politely moved off and bought myself a sandwich and went and sat down thinking about it. When I got to Delaware on that speaking trip, I met a lot of people who had known him for years. He isn't liked. He's loved. He's loved the way grandchildren love grandparents. He's loved the way you love a favorite teacher. He's loved the way you are fond of the people who made a difference in your life and helped turn something around. So I am very enthusiastic about his candidacy. I will not vote just against Donald Trump. I am voting for Joe Biden. In the primaries, I voted for Elizabeth Warren because I really want to see a woman president of the United States. And I think the fastest road to that right now is Kamala Harris, who I think is going to be wonderful as a vice president and step off into a very powerful position. But that's something else down the road. Right now, I am so happy that a human with the depth of personality and spirituality and character and Christian devotion, may I dare use that word, and traditional Roman Catholic devotion to life, real pro-life, pro-everyone's life in this country, rather than just the white, plutocratic, billionaire elite to which Donald Trump owes allegiance, not to mention Vladimir Putin, has a shot with Joe Biden of real leadership. So yes, let him fumble a word now and again. But I promise you this, having sat and talked with the man, even briefly on a train, whether he misspeaks or not, what's going on in here with him is very sound. He will listen. He will take advice. He has our best at heart. He cares more about you and me than about himself. He has been winnowed in the fire of loss and suffering, and I trust that far more than any political platform. My name is Frank Schaefer.